Welcome to Mount Wellington!
Whoa! Keeping in mind that the average oyster on your dinner plate is about 2 years old, these oysters are about 3 to 4 months old. But just a word of warning that I've seen lots of people, they pose for their oyster and then they tilt it down for a better angle and then they just tip it straight.
Good morning guys, this is our third day here in Tasmania. Ang aming destination for today is Mount Wellington for sunrise, and then kami mag-oyster farm. So if you're interested, just keep on watching, but before that, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and to tap that notification bell para updated kayo every time may bago akong video just like this. And time check, bakit lagi ko nag-check ng aking wristwatch? However, New Zealand time naman siya, it's 4:09, or kailangan namin umalis dito by 4:30. So ayan, sandali, let's do a fit check. So ito yung jacket ko lang, cardigan, wala akong top na ganyan. Ito lang yung ating atake, konti lang. Kasi wala akong masyadong dalang damit dahil kasi 7 kilos lang yung aking tawag dyan, bagahe, dahil travel light tayo. So ayan, ito lang. So pwede na rin. Laters!
Ano? Bakit?
Huwag ka na mag-ano kasi nandito na yun.
Lord, nandito na ba kami sa bangin? Ayusin mo, tinga. Ayusin mo. Bangin ang sa gilid. Pagilid ka lang dito. Pagilid ka lang dito sa gilid.
Mamaya ka makabahan.
Punta na po kami sa Mount Wellington. Mag-yonting.
Nasasakita na yan.
Nasaan na po kami? Clouds.
Good morning guys!
Hi, it's my birthday tomorrow.
Good morning! Meron ba itong ayan, nagkurog na siya.
Anyway, andito na tayo ngayon sa Mount Wellington with a view
Of nothingness.
of
Sea of clouds.
sea of clouds.
Literal sea of
We are inside the clouds, so let's go out and check out the clouds.
Bye!
Laters. All right, here we are. Welcome to Mount Wellington. So this is Mount Wellington. Unfortunately, I couldn't see anything, but it's really lovely. Lovely is the feeling. Lovely is the Unsa daw? Anyway, let's go have a quick walk around Mount Wellington. Just over there. Parang creepy siya a little bit, but see, Wow, thank you Lord. Thank you Lord. Naabutan gid namin ang sunrise. So, nakita namin ang sunrise. So, it's so amazing. And ngayon, ulan na. So, pinadaan lang talaga ni Lord ang sun at nagulan. Thank you so much, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, thank you. Quick stop over dito sa Sorel, Tasmania. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful sunrise. Pero pagoda na ang iyong ating kasi maaga ako nagising.
Ang Disney princess po ay naging driver. Yan na po. Disney princess namin. Galit po siya. Siya bro, farm. Mga video ko mga kahoy.
So in 2018, where this wood panelling starts, on the side of the building, that was all built on. So the shop was made twice the size of what it used to be. Everything inside the kitchen was also brand new. The undercover seating area was made twice the size of what it used to be, with a new roof above it. The staff have a staff room now, and the toilets had a major upgrade as well, saying that we can flush them. It is a huge improvement for what we had. And like I said, they had to do this to cope with the numbers of tourists, because over the summer, they will potentially sell up to 300 dozen oysters a day. Which, to save you the maths, is about 6,000 shucked oysters a day. So it's a really intense time with a lot of people around. But it didn't start off that busy. So the owners of Giles and Julia Fisher, they first bought the farm that we're going to in 2005. And when they did, they had roughly 90,000 oysters on the farm. And Giles would do all the farm work, and Julia would shuck a few oysters, sell them out of the kitchen window with a baby on her back. But you fast forward to today, and they now have two shops. The shop that we just left, and a second shop up at Devil's Corner, the vineyard. And over the summer, they would hire about 25 staff members to run those two shops full time. But the farm has also grown from from about 90,000 oysters when they started to today they now have a capacity of up to 5 million oysters. So they've increased production by quite a bit, to say the least. And from the farm they're growing the oysters and mussels, which you'll get to try today, of course, fresh. But it should be noted that everything from the farm is actually being sold retail in the two shops. So they don't export to any interstate markets or international markets for that matter, or not even a local pub or restaurant down the road. Literally everything goes from the farm straight to the shop. And that's because they're so busy they can't afford to sell them anywhere else, which is a pretty good problem to have. In fact, there are days that they are so busy in the shop that they have to buy oysters in to keep up with demand. And if they do that, they typically buy them from St. Helens, so just an hour and 20 north from where we are here. Within that shop, if you have a look around, you'll see that they sell a lot more than just oysters and mussels and all the cooked options that go along with them. But they're also selling the scallops and the Atlantic smoked salmon, some seasonal fish, the fish and chips, the lobsters and the prawns, and a bit of pickled octopus as well.
Uso yan. That's the latest fashion.
Yeah. Which I know sounds like a joke, but when it comes to waders, these actually are the latest
ones.
So these are the most recent model. So this is what we're going to be wearing today. These are called waders. They're pretty straightforward. They go by your shoe size. So you take your shoes off and leave your socks on for comfort. If you're not wearing socks though, it's not a big deal. If you can, it might pay to try and tuck your pants into your socks, like so. And that way they don't bunch up around your knees once you slide them on.
Just like we don't.
Yeah, but if you're wearing short socks or no socks, it doesn't matter. You just push them down so they don't bunch up too much. That's all. It's just for comfort. But I suggest 1 foot at a time, and then once you get your feet in, you do the wader wiggle as you pull them up as high as they go, and then it's up over your shoulders like a big curve overall. Simple as that. Looking out there today, it is a low tide, so the water will only come up to about your thighs. So it's not that bad. So if you want to stick your phone in this pocket, it's quite safe to do that if you want to take some photos while you're out there. They might feel a bit big around your feet once you get them on, but I wouldn't worry about it too much, because once you get out there, they're sucking around your feet. So they feel a bit big and funny on land, but nice and snug in the river. That's where it counts. If you need some help with these straps, just let me know. I can come around and help adjust them for you. It's easier to do it once you have them on. And when it comes to your shoe size, just tell me what you normally shop for, whether it's Australian or European, UK, US, Kmart, Target, doesn't matter. I've learned to convert them in my head, so I can get you the right size. And then there's a couple of seats and pallets over here if you need to sit down to help put them on. So, I'll start here. Your shoe size?
Ay, hindi ko na video ang sarili ko.
Ulitin mo!
Petron.
Sige na lang, sige na. Ganun mo, one at a time. Kabila na naman. Pag napasok na yung paa mo, kayo ka na.
Do I look alright?
Maganda ito dad, no? Sa baka.
Oo, dad.
Mga komando.
Go walking today. If you look down the river, left of that green bush out there and those pelicans, you can see some wooden posts sticking out of the water. It's also our farm. And then right down the bend of the river that you can't see from here is our main production area. And that's where most of the oysters are. And then we have the second half of our farm, which is out in the middle of Great Oyster Bay. And we have another 40 hectares out there.
Whoa.
And that's what you would call the subtitle lease, because it's underwater all year round. But instead of thinking of it as a subtitle and intertitle, think of the river more as like a nursery / a high school, and then the ocean is graduation, where we send the oysters to fatten up. And that will make a lot more sense as we tell the story. But the oysters that we're farming here, of course, are the Pacific oyster that we're all used to seeing on our dinner plate, and that's because they're the most widely farmed oyster in the world. They're actually native to the Northeast Asia region, to places like Japan. And they were introduced into Tasmania in the late 1940s purely for aquaculture. But they weren't widely farmed into the late 50s, early 60s. And that's when this farm started. And we're pretty lucky they started this farm when they did, because in 1982, this river became a protected wetland. So there's no other industry in this river now, except for oysters. And the one ingredient you need above everything else for a healthy oyster is a healthy environment. So it doesn't get much more pristine than this. But the average age of an oyster on your plate is about 2 years old. However, oysters are a lot like people in the sense that some of us are tall, some of us are short, an oyster on your plate could be 1 year old or it could be 4 years old. He's just taking a lot longer to grow. But the average is 2 years, which means we farm them to a size, not an age. So as soon as they're big enough to eat, they're good enough to go to the shop. But if you leave oysters out here to keep growing, they don't just stop at 2 years, and they have the potential to grow up to 1 meter long and up to about 30 years of age. They just keep getting bigger and bigger. Now I don't have any of those to show you. You'll have to come back in 20 years. But what I can show you out here is a couple of 12-year-old oysters. They're getting a decent size. And that will give you an idea what you're dealing with when you get to 1 meter long. So we'll have a look at them, talk about their flavour difference, their texture difference, and their market value difference, because that's the main reason we don't see them in Australia, their market value. And then beyond that, I'll show you the opposite. And I'll show you some baby oysters. So there's no trick to walking in the water today though. You just take your time. It's all nice and compact under your feet, and you'll feel the water pressure sucking around your legs as we go. So we'll head on now. Okay lang madulas din.
Andito na kami sa oyster farm.
Dapat yung meron kayo kasabi ng katawag na ginagamit natin.
Best day ever. Very nice experience.
Bakit ba ganito ang adventure niyo sa mga senior?
Tayo dito.
Hawa naman kayo sa mga senior.
This is a big 12-year-old oyster, and typically we don't see these for sale that often because 12 of those is pretty daunting for a lot of people. So most restaurants prefer to sell the smaller ones. However, commercially speaking, the reason why we don't see them is because the oysters that you're going to eat today on land are of a premium grade. So if we were selling them to say the Sydney fish market, you could sell them for $10 to $11.50 a dozen every 2 years. For an extra 8 to 10 years, we're selling these for $17.50 a dozen. So we're much better to grow the small ones and sell them off quickly.
There's another small one. Go up here. Look.
But I've had people try them out here, just natural, and they said texture-wise they're more or less the same, but flavour-wise everyone preferred the smaller ones. They said they were sweeter. Not that they tasted bad, just the smaller ones were sweeter. But also there's a lot in your mouth. And I can tell you now, watching someone eat one is as confronting as actually doing it. Because everyone on that tour was both amazed and disgusted. Because the gentleman that did it, he did it in one mouthful. So we had all so, although impressive, I could have gone without seeing it. But around the world, these are a lot more popular, in particular Japan. And if you order a dozen oysters in Japan, there's a very high chance that a dozen of those will come out. So you got to be wary of that. But also in more traditional fishing villages around the world, you might see these being used to make oyster sauce. So that's another reason to have them at that size. But for us, they're more or less just our pets at this point. They're just a step above a pet rock. Because there's something on the inside. And his name's Frank and George. There we go. Well, I'll put Frank and George back in there with their friends. And we'll make another semicircle over this way, and I'll show you the opposite. I'll show you some babies. Reproduce in the wild is that when this water warms up in peaks, which is usually late January, early February, the river can get to about 25 degrees. So it gets fairly warm by Tasmanian standards. And in winter it drops below 5 degrees. So it's a pretty big window. And at the moment it's actually about 20 degrees. But when that water warms up and peaks, the oysters will open and they spawn, releasing all the eggs and sperm into the water. And that's what we call a broadcast breeder, because essentially they can't meet one another, so they just open up and hope for the best. But there are also chain reaction spawners too, which means that we could have 1 million oysters here, and if one spawns, they all spawn. So it's a chain reaction. And the sperm and eggs are floating around, they find each other, and they create a larvae. And that larvae will swim around for about 6 weeks before latching onto a stump or a rock or anything solid in an intertidal zone. And why that's important is that if my hand's an oyster, when it's a high tide, the oysters are underwater and they're open and they're eating. And what they eat is anything that fits in their mouth. So it's just like a holiday in Tasmania. You just eat whatever fits.
Yeah.
And then when it's a low tide, the oysters are out of the water, so they're shut, but they're getting the UV from the sun. And that's what makes the shell nice and hard. But more importantly, the action of opening and closing is strengthening their main muscle called the abductor muscle, which is the white hard bit on the inside. And it's important for us to have a strong abductor muscle so that when we take our oysters to the shop, you put them in the fridge and they'll survive up to 11 days out of water, pretty happily. But how we buy our baby oysters? We actually buy them from a nursery / a hatchery. And Tasmania has the biggest hatcheries in Australia. And they pick 20 to 30 of the best looking oysters they can find, purely based on good looks or good family genes. They put them into a big tank of water. You increase the water temperature by 5 degrees every couple of weeks. The oysters think a full year has gone past, and so they spawn into the tank, creating up the larvae. 6 weeks later, you throw in some crushed up shell. Usually it's crushed up scallop shell because it's flat and smooth. The larvae will swim along, latch on, and create a baby oyster, which is called a spat. But it should be noted that it's not forming around a piece of shell, it's just forming against a piece of shell, like it would form against something in the wild. Because an oyster doesn't need to be attached to anything to actually grow and to get bigger. It does it all itself internally, but it does need somewhere to start because it can't produce that initial shell just floating around in limbo. So once that initial shell is formed, you stir up all your broken scallop shells, all your baby oysters will fall off, you then separate them out and sell them off to all the farms. And those 20 to 30 adult oysters will produce about 200 million babies. So it's a pretty good return. And we buy about 1 million at a time for 2 cents each. And I'll show you some now. I'll hand these out so you can have a closer look. But keeping in mind that the average oyster on your dinner plate is about 2 years old, these oysters are about 3 to 4 months old, based off that average. So, but just bear with me here, and I'll come and share between two, so you can all have a closer look. But I'll share these around so you can have a closer look. Just bear with me, because my examples, they keep growing. So, so there you go. Don't eat it all at once. So, there you go, and I'll share these around. You can have a closer look. So there you go.
That's baby. 4 months.
About 3 to 4 months, yeah.
3 to 4 months. I'll take a photo of that.
So that is a fully formed oyster, just like you'd see on your dinner plate, but of course tiny, and you'd be a bit annoyed if a dozen of those came out. Fascinated, I'm sure, but annoyed. So as they go through the grater, the small ones are going to fall out at the beginning, they come back out into the river to grow some more. The large ones, they fall out the end, they're big enough to eat, so they go straight to the shop. Or if the shop doesn't need them, they might come out here for storage. So you run out of oysters on the weekend, you just harvest them out of the river. This medium size, however, is approaching a restaurant size oyster, so we'll put them into a new home, which we call a module, and then we take them out to the ocean, where we fatten them up. And that's what I'll explain next. So I'll just put these back, and what we're going to do is take a few steps out this way. It does get slightly deeper, and I'll show you what happens to them. And the owner of the farm, Giles, came up with this so he could be more efficient at moving the stock around the farm. And what happens are those oysters that are almost restaurant size, they get filled up to be about a quarter full all the way down. We load them up into the bigger boats that's usually on the back of that John Deere tractor over there and take them out to the offshore lease. And out there we have these long ropes that are about 400 to 500 meters long, held down by some pretty hefty anchors with some floats holding that line up, and then we have toggles hanging down underneath. And you simply drive along, pick that line up with a crane, sits in the side of the boat, and then you can drive backwards and forwards along that rope. And as those toggles are coming past, you can probably guess what happens, but we put the toggles through these loops and then we push them off the boat. So they're hanging 6 meters below the water. And what are they doing underwater? They're just open and they're eating for 10 to 12 weeks with no exercise. So you can imagine what happens. They get pretty fat pretty quick. So these oysters go from here, and at the end of 12 weeks they come back in and they're up to here because they've essentially doubled in size. However, being underwater for so long, that shell becomes brittle because it hasn't been getting the UV from the sun, and the muscle becomes weak because it hasn't been working out with the tide. So when you harvest these, you'll harvest maybe say 30 of them at a time. You'll empty 15 of them out, take them up to the shop, put them in the fridge, and even with a weak muscle, they will still survive a good 6 or 7 days. The other 15 though will sit on this rack beside me where they go in and out of the water, hardening the shell, strengthening the muscle, so that if you run out of oysters on the weekend or it's too rough to harvest from the ocean on a Monday morning, you just harvest out of the river and you don't lose time selling oysters. So it's more like a major backup plan than anything. But this module has already come in from the ocean, so would everybody like a fresh oyster?
Yes!
Yes. Now just quickly, we'll talk about mussels in just a second, but just quickly, this is a baby mussel. See that there?
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a baby mussel. See that on there? So,
Maliit siya.
very, very small.
It's
I'll talk about the mussels in just a
Mas
second,
malaki pa ang kwan ng bigas.
because we are farming mussels as well. So
Your booger is bigger. Ay, you know, our booger. Ay, there's another starfish. You throw it away.
yeah, you can throw that away.
Oh, throw it away, Dad. Pest.
A couple of things. Having an oyster out of the river, you might find them to be a bit saltier than you're used to, but I don't know what else to tell you. That's what they taste like. But also, I'll ask that you hold on to your shells, because I'll collect those. Otherwise, we'd end up with thousands of shells out here. And lastly, and really importantly, take as many photos as you like, but just a word of warning that I've seen lots of people, they pose with their oyster and then they tilt it down for a better angle and then they just tip it straight out.
Oh,
So,
okay, I will
just
eat
be wary
first.
of that. So, there we go. Look at that.
Side view.
Lemon.
Sarap? Yung maalat siya eh. Hey!
Thank
Alat?
you very much.
It's yummy.
Well, it doesn't get much fresher than that.
Sarap. Fresh? Fresh?
Super fresh. Andito na tayo ngayon sa shore. Tingnan naman natin paano paano yung factory ng mussel. Mussel? Oh, this is lovely, you know? This is the best. It is super duper worth it, guys. If you come here to Tasmania, it's a bit of a drive from Hobart, but it's one of the best experience I have ever. Yeah, I love it. So you must try.
With our toggles and our modules, and that's what it looks like. These would be a bit more spaced out, these ropes would be longer, but you get the idea. But next to these long ropes, we have ropes dedicated to just catching mussels. So they're just wildly caught. So we don't, so we don't buy baby mussels, we don't seed the rope or anything. They're just naturally occurring. And a mussel will spawn much like an oyster. But instead of 6 weeks as a larvae, they take 8 weeks as a larvae. Instead of swimming to a location to latch on and grow like an oyster would, a mussel will just drift around and latch onto the first thing it goes past, which for us, it's these ropes. And they latch on and then they grow out from there. And they take about 12 to 18 months to grow to the size you like to eat. And when they're ready to harvest, you have a nice big clump of mussels on here. You pick this up with the crane, it sits in the rollers in the side of the boat, and then wearing your gloves, you drive along and you strip them off with your hands into a big net. And then you crane that net into the deck of the boat and empty it out. Simple as that. But so we can catch more, we have this piece of technical equipment that was invented here, which is a rope and a brick, and that's just purely to catch more. It's 3-meter ropes. And when we're eating in just a second, I'll come around and show you a photo of one, because they look pretty impressive as they come out of the ocean. But if you haven't had Tasmanian mussels before, you should forget what mussels taste like and let this be your new baseline, because they're incredibly sweet and flavoursome and tender. Because in Australia, typically we get served the New Zealand green-lipped mussels, which in New Zealand are very well known for being some of the best in the world, which they are.
I agree.
However, in Australia, they have a tarnished reputation of being a bit chewy and tough and not that great. And the reason why is when they export those mussels to Australia, to satisfy our biosecurity laws, they partially cook those mussels. And then they get to our kitchens and we cook them again. So they become tough and chewy. So if you want local mussels, these are called the Tasmanian blue mussel if you see them on the menu. Coincidentally though, we're the only mussel farm in Tasmania. So if you see them on the menu, they're definitely from this farm.
Here.
But all through South Australia, Victoria, parts of New South Wales, there are plenty of mussel farms, and they are farming what we call the black mussel, or the common mussel, which is actually the same mussel that we grow, scientifically named as the same species. They just call them black because the shell's black on the outside, and we call them blue because the shell's blue on the inside. And that's the only difference. Except ours are better, because we won the award.
Yeah, fair enough.
But we'll go get out of our waders. I'll show you the easy way to get out of your waders, because there is a trick to it. And then we'll get into some seafood. So.
Kasarap na, no? Grabe kasarap, no?
Masarap masyado.
Grabe kasarap.
Ngayon, kailangan nang alisin lahat ng mga paraphernalia. Alright, naiwan ko ang sapatos ko. Ayan. So, this is their waders. I'm gonna take it off now. It's easy. So, ganyan siya. Alis mo lang siya. Okay. That's how you remove the waders.
Alam niyo ba guys, sayang kasi nag-video ako, akala ko na-press ko yung video, hindi pala.
Sayang. So, ayan. So, nakita ko na lang, this is their super gandang waders. Lovely. Now, this is the oysters. Yan.
So typically when it comes to shucking an oyster, what we're used to seeing is you see a lot of people will shuck from the back, which is a perfectly fine way to shuck an oyster, but a hard way to shuck an oyster, because the shell is the thickest at the back, and that's why they call the hinge. And you see a lot of chefs will shuck from the hinge because you're less likely to chip the shell. So presentation wise it looks better. But if you're at home and you don't care about presentation, you just want them open, coming in from the side is a lot easier, because as soon as we cut through that muscle, the oyster will pop open and then you're ready to go and you haven't stabbed yourself, and that's important. So before I begin, is anybody here left-handed?
Me!
Yeah? So there's only one difference. Being right-handed, we want to have that hinge pointing towards us because the muscle is always on this right-hand side. If you're doing it left, the only difference is you're going to have it pointing away because the muscle's now on that side for you. But everything else is the same. So I suggest a nice good open grip of your oyster. A lot of people, they tend to put their thumb on top, which is fine, but then they say it's really hard to open because you're holding it closed.
Yeah.
So Nice good open grip and a good grip of your knife. And I like to think of it with my thumb behind the guard. It's like an extension of your thumb. And this next step you don't have to do once you've had some practice, but initially it gives you a good guideline. That using the edge of my knife, and I'll come around to show you more closely, but I'm just going to scrape down the side of the shell here a few times, like so, to expose this white line. And this white line is telling me where the top shell meets the bottom shell. There you go. I'll just make some room there so they can see at the back there. So this white line. And the muscle that we want to cut through is always about halfway down. So I'm going to bring my knife to be about halfway down and stick it just above that white line. And you'll always want to go above the white line, because if you go below, it's like trying to stick your knife through a brick wall. So you'll always want to go just above that white line. And I'm going to hold it at a 45-degree angle. And at this stage, a lot of people get pretty excited and they really screwdriver their knife, which is fine, but you'll chip a lot of shell into your oyster. So we're actually much better to go side to side. I will admit, a little bit of twisting does help, but then once you're in, side to side is the way to go. So, applying a bit of pressure, coming in at my 45 degrees, and doing a little bit of twisting on that one spot, like so. You can see, not big actions, and my knife has gone in. And now I'm going to move it from side to side while I flatten it out. So I come across the top of the oyster, so you don't stab it. So I'm just going to go side to side while I flatten it out. And it should be noted that I'm not trying to open the oyster yet. I'm just getting my knife in. So I'm going to keep going side to side until I'm halfway in with my knife. So again, no major actions, just side to side, wiggling it in, keep going to about halfway, and now we're going to open it. But again, lots of people get excited and they really start working their knife. They bring it around here and back, twist it up and down with their thumb on top, and they turn it into a soup. So all we do is, if my pinky is the knife, is simply go forwards and back, and you cut the muscle and it pops open. So I'll try and do it so you can see, but I simply go forwards and back, and it pops open. Now of course it's still pretty closed, so instead of trying to get your fingers under there to pull that open, using our knife, you can bring it towards the back of the hinge, like so. Nothing technical there, my knife's just at the back of the shell. And I'm going to give that a twist, like I'm turning a key towards me. And if I hold it open with my thumb, you can see that he's still stuck to the top of the shell. And that's just the moisture holding that there. And if I was to rip that off quickly, it would most likely come with it, and then you lose that part of the oyster. So with our knife, we can just gently scrape that down to save it all, like so, towards the back of the shell. Oops, there we go. We peel that off. We haven't lost any oyster in our top shell. Nice and neat. Now you might have bits of shell in there, or bits of seaweed or mud from being out in the river, so you can use the water in there to help flush all that out. So as you're going to tip out that water, using our knife, we can just gently scrape out any bits of shell or seaweed or anything else and just flush all that out. But don't worry, because you won't lose that salty brightness if that's your favourite part. Because if you let that oyster sit for 10 seconds or more, it fills up with water again, but with the water that it retains. So you don't lose that salty brightness. But the final stage of shucking an oyster, which definitely isn't necessary, but it looks good in front of your friends and family, is cutting them off the muscle, which is necessary, but then flipping them over for presentation. So using the edge of my knife, where this muscle is here, I'm going to slide in underneath. So I'm actually under the oyster there, but I'm hard up against that muscle. You can see that? So there's the muscle, and I'm underneath it like that. And what we're going to do is scrape down that muscle. So there's no cutting, it's just a hard scrape or a push. So I get under here, it's a nice hard scrape down, so it comes off, like so. The oyster is still held in place with moisture, so I run my knife around the outside to loosen it up, and he's ready to fall out. And then of course you can eat it, but I'm going to flip him over. And there's two common ways, but no wrong way. Using the flat of the blade, I like to push down on the outside. You can see that he wants to flip over. Or you might find it easier to go under the muscle and then flip it away. But whatever you find easier. There's no wrong way of doing it. And to be honest, it's easier not to do it. So, but I'm going to push down and flip over, like that. And then that is what we're used to seeing in a restaurant. It doesn't change the flavour, of course. It just makes them a lot more expensive. So, there we go. Well, there you go. You can have that one. So in front of you, on your barrels, you have some lemons and lime. Lime is a nice flavour if you haven't tried it. The sauce in the middle is a red wine vinegar, which is a lot.
So now, Ivan is opening the mussels that we have.
Oyster?
Ay, oyster pala. Daagad. As you can see, Ivan's opening the oysters. Marunong ka na?
Yung sinabi niya.
So, I'm gonna prepare the oysters. You peel them,
You eat them.
and I will eat them.
Yum!
I'll subo one for you.
Wait lang.
So, it's so yum. It's the best experience ever here in Tasmania. I love it. I love it so much.
The reason
Ooh.
from FREYCINET Vineyard, which is only 20 minutes from here.
Oh, yeah, we were.
You can even pour a bit of Riesling on top of an oyster as well. It's good. It's good.
So this is the oyster. Yum. Tapos mag-pictorial muna kami.
Okay, you throw your flat shells on that pile, just
Cheers. Nangga. Nangga.
Saan mo na natin?
So yan, tingnan natin pa kasi gusto ni Ivan i-open mo na lahat ng aming oysters. But you know what? I'm just so happy. Thank you Lord that it's not raining na yung talagang lakas. So what we're having are oysters with Riesling. So yeah, let's go. Let's check the others out. Kung kamusta naman sila. And their experience with opening oysters. How are you, Dad? Okay.
na ako. I think inapod-pod mo Hindi ko marunong.
How are you, sister?
course.
Thank you for the lovely day. Isn't it lovely?
Yeah, it's
I told you. Oh, sakto.
We went to Tasmania. I was there with Australia, so we went out.
How are you, Len? Parang hindi ganyan yung instruction, Len ba?
Nakakain na gana ko.
How's your experience, sister?
Very nice.
Best day ever.
Yes, best day ever.
This is the
Ano gana yun, ano ting? Nakalimutan ko na.
nakalimutan niya na.
It's funny because everyone on our tour group was
Uncle Boy, how are you, Uncle?
Kaysa na ako. Kaysa na ako. Ito, pangalawa na.
it was so hot, you know.
At may progress, Uncle.
Okay. Sarap.
But yeah,
Uncle, kamusta?
Don't talk to me. I'm busy.
just
Ante, ano?
Ready na.
Ready.
It's a joke.
so friendly.
Ang
Everyone has a good time.
Matakbo na ako. I already opened two.
wala pa ako nakakain ba?
I'm going to
Dahan-dahan lang. Ang galing. Pero grabe naman yung script mo. Parang naalis na lahat ng shell.
and then just above it. Just above it on the side.
Luckily, Ivan is doing it for me. Ay, so lovely. Yan. So, tara. Oh, okay. I'm gonna try it na lang din. Alright. Paano nga yun lang ga? Get one. So, sabi niya, diba? Just grab one.
Careful lang, matuluan.
Ganyan. So, grab one. Alisin yung kiskisin siya. Mahirap. Medyo mahirap pala siya. Akala ko madali lang.
When you get the hang of it, madali na naman siya.
So, iput daw siya sa middle. Ilagay siya sa yung knife. Alam nga, hindi ka man, bakit hindi siya? Why I cannot? It's quite,
Ang kita?
di ba ganyan na?
Oo.
Oh.
Bye tayo.
Ah.
May head.
Saan? Example?
Puti.
Saan ito?
Oo, abang ng puti. Ganun. Nakapasok ka na.
Wala pa. Ayan, ito.
Oh, above ng puti.
What dito?
Yan. Yan.
Hindi gito.
Diba, ganyan. Above ng puti, di ba?
Some are orange and some are white, and that is male and female. So the females are the orange and the male are the white.
Mahirap.
You might find
Hindi
some
may
little crabs in there with them. You can eat the crab, nothing wrong with it. But I prefer a non-crunchy mussel, so I flick them in. And if any of your mussels haven't opened
Yeah.
after being cooked, you should break them open and eat them.
Tapos,
Okay. Swivel lang. Okay.
Tapos i-cut mo yung muscle.
And now, I've opened this with the help of Ivan, and then you just have to, ayan, no? Okay.
Tapos linisan mo siya.
Ayan. So, ayan na siya. Na-open na. So, aside from the oysters,
You might find some little
we'll
crabs.
also try the mussels. These are blue mussels from Tasmania, blue Tasmanian mussels. So now let's try them out. Put you here, guys, and then this is the steamed mussel.
Ganyan daw galaw ka.
Yeah. Happens to be a photo of me.
Oh wow!
That's all the mussels, how they're coming in. So,
Shoot, that's a lot.
yeah.
When was that?
That would have been maybe 2015. Something like that.
Super nice.
Time to eat. Oh, tapos na kami day.
Sobrang sarap. Grabe. Tahong is...
Kaiba ang tanong.
So delicious.
Alo, kataba eh.
So far, like it.
Ang harap.
Nag-change ka na, no? Change of heart ka na, no? So, sa tingin mo na talaga mong... Thank you lang ga sa pagbalat.
Okay, let's dig in.
Dig in.
May cellphone na parang sa ilalim ng cellphone, tapos magaganyan na. Ting!
Sarap?
Sarap. Bakit masarap ang ano dito, tahong?
Grabe.
Yan. Worth it. Thank you.
Salamat.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. I've seen people shake the amount of pressure that they use.
Nandito na kami ngayon sa restaurant. Grabe ka timing. Restaurant, yan ang kanilang menu. Ito yung kanilang pa-order. Meron silang mga oysters, 28 AUD a dozen. Ganyan. Meron silang pickled octopus. Meron silang take-away mussels and unshucked oysters. Yan. Tapos, ito yung kanilang restaurant. Grabe, alam niyo ba guys, sobrang lucky namin kasi nag-ulan na naman. Hindi kami nabasa while doon kami ngayon. Yan siya. Yan. Yan. Yan lang siya guys. Walang tao. Usually daw kasi during summer daming tao dito. Kaya nag-improve na nila ito, gi-expand na nila, pero timing talaga, enough lang na tao nandito ngayon. Yan. So, dahil konti na lang aking minutes, hanggang dito na lang muna. Amen. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Hep hep, hooray! Hep hep, hooray!
Ay, nagbahagi.
Yan o, naglabas-labas o. O yun o, pink pa siya.
Oh,